if we don't get to see Chimere's butt,
I was gonna say that. I know Shaw like the
I
back of
want
my
to see
hand. Hey,
the
that's new.
strangers.
The Acolyte episode 7, the penultimate episode of season 1 is here. I'm Vactor. I'm here with my favorite Star Wars co-host, Shaw. How you doing today, Shaw?
I'm doing good. I'm doing real good. I was
Jedi
blocking.
Master.
I was blocking
Oh,
Night
okay.
Sister arrows.
Yes.
Yeah.
My Padawan, Shoffbin, is here to talk The Acolyte episode 7. Torbin got his day in court today, Shaw. We finally got to see what the other side of that flashback was from episode 3, the Jedi point of view. We got to see why Torbin was so distraught that he killed himself, that he committed suicide, and a whole lot of other things. We got a lot of answers, Shoff, but my question to you, at the end of this episode, did you feel like there were more questions asked than answered, or did you feel satisfied at the end of this one?
I did not feel satisfied, that's for sure. It also, they really struggle with ending episodes. It feels very abrupt. Like they don't have like a good solid, like it would be like ending a phone call without saying goodbye. It's kind of how it feels like to me. Like there's like a weird vibe at the end of every episode that it just kind of falls off. And so I did not feel satisfied by the end, but I also feel like, as far as from like questions answered, yes, we got questions answered, but I question whether or not those answers justify like the behaviors of some of these characters.
Okay.
Like,
yeah, let's get into that.
We can get, like, for instance, like Master Torbin. Do you really think like what he experienced is enough for him to commit himself to the bearish vow or whatever it's called? Bearish oath, is that what it is?
Vow, you're right. The first
vow
time.
Okay.
Yes.
And choose to be essentially silent for 16 years or however long he did it for. I'm like, he was possessed, or he was overtaken by Mother Anastasia, but otherwise he was just kind of bummed about being there on Brendok and wanted to be back in Coruscant. He was tired of pulling weeds. He legit was pulling weeds. I can't. They had him pulling weeds for 7 weeks on the planet before they even explained why he was doing it. If anything, this show is what it's doing is proving that the Jedi are not like the great group of people that we've come to expect or just kind of like assume that they are. And that's kind of like my takeaway from this show is like maybe the Jedi aren't so great after all.
And that, man, there's so many great things to jump off what you just said. Let's actually, that very last one, that's something that a lot of people have been upset about. I've noticed on social media and comments and stuff, was this is not what I took the Jedi to be. And a lot of people felt that way with Luke Skywalker in the last Jedi, where that was not my Luke Skywalker. That's not who I thought he was for the last 30 years.
True.
You know?
Yeah, I remember that.
I think it's something that I like, the way that they're examining the Jedi. And you and I both grew up in a time where the original trilogy was king, right? There wasn't the prequels for a long time. Then the prequels came out, and that examined the Jedi, the kind of the failings of the Jedi, falling to the dark side, Anakin turning. And this is doing an even deeper exploration into the Jedi where, yeah, maybe they weren't the best thing for the galaxy, and them trying to gatekeep the Force, saying, hey, if somebody's using the Force, we got to know about it. We, the Jedi, are the ones who need to police this. We are the ones who are best trained to do it. No one else should have access to the Force. And I think there should be a balance in everything. There shouldn't be just one side. It shouldn't be all light side. It shouldn't be all dark side.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we grew up. I think you and I is like, okay, dark side is bad, Darth Vader's bad, all this stuff is bad. Everybody, Luke Skywalker, Yoda, Obi-Wan, the Jedi are good. Those are
Right.
superheroes in Star
Yeah,
Wars.
exactly. I mean, Darth Vader, yes, he had the conflict. There was good in him. So he operated in a sense of gray that the other characters didn't have. But if you were looking at it like truly from like Jedi versus Sith, it's a clear divide. Like it's a very like good guys, bad guys. It's really easy to tell. But as Star Wars has progressed, especially in the newer Disney Plus TV series, as well as the sequel series, you can see that there's shades of gray in more characters. And I like that. I think that's more
Yes.
reflective of reality. Even if it's something that's it's science fiction, fantasy, it's grounding it in a sense of reality that we all have shadow selves, or we all have like darker corners, or desires, intentions, things that we don't share. And so like there's more to us. We're multifaceted and multidimensional, and I think that we're getting into that. And I don't mind it at all. I don't mind that the Jedi are being sort of like set up in a way to sort of you can tell that they're not this all knowing, all great, all good organization, that they're kind of making it up as they go along a little bit. So
Yeah, and that's also something that I talked about on a previous episode about the Jedi being afraid of anyone having attachment, even though their whole thing was okay, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering.
suffering.
And is suffering, are you able to avoid suffering? Right? That was kind of a question that I had on a previous episode. And some religions and some beliefs and philosophies say no, suffering is a part of life. To live is to suffer, to survive is to find meaning in the suffering. And I'm starting to kind of go down that path of you have to have both. You can't have one without the other because you wouldn't know the good from the bad if you didn't have bad. If everything was all good, you would not know what bad is. If everything was all light, you would not know what darkness is, the absence of light. All that stuff. It makes me think that's more a nuanced approach to it in a more nuanced way. Maybe attachment is not the worst thing possible. Yeah, we saw what happened with Anakin when he had attachment. I think we're seeing what's happening with Soul as he's being attached to Osha in this episode, and taking kids from their parents because they don't have that strong attachment and that strong bond yet. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I'm starting to question myself, because if you had asked me in 1999, oh yeah, take them, take the babies, take everybody. Now, me as flash forward, in 2024, number one, I'm a parent now, I'm a dad. But number two, looking at the Jedi in a different light, in a different way, maybe that's not the
Yeah.
best. And I like that. I like that this show is asking those questions. And that to me is a good thing when it's getting you talking, getting you to kind of look at things in a different light. So to
Yeah.
me, at least the Acolyte is a win in that sense.
Yeah, and also I think it's helpful to remember that these Jedi are High Republic Jedi,
Yes,
and
that's
this is
right.
the first we're seeing live action of how Jedi operate in that regard. So they can have their shortcomings. They're maybe trying to figure it out. Maybe they're not as streamlined or polished or as established as we've seen them in the regular series, original trilogy, or into the prequels, or whatever. Like so. But I think like this episode, when you see what they were doing 16 years prior on Brendock, it's kind of laughable. I could not help but smile and kind of giggle at just the tediousness of their task. Because and you know what, like a lot of times they'll, when it comes to like set pieces or props, they'll try to repurpose things and maybe make something that's not like what it's intended for, make that be a prop for something, right? But Kelnaka is out there with a freaking metal detector, and there's not, I mean, it looks like a metal detector. Like it's not, I bet it was actually a metal detector that they may have just like added some 3D printed like pieces to give it some kind of a slight look, a change to it. But like it's a metal detector, and then you've got the rest of them throwing weeds in buckets, collecting stones and moss, and then they're scanning bushes. I'm like, what is this? No Man's Sky? Like when you get points for scanning bushes? Like
that is
there's
funny.
Got to be a better way. They've been on the planet for 7 weeks, they say, and that's all they're doing is scanning and throwing stuff in baskets and buckets and things and containers. And I'm thinking they have a ship in orbit, I assume, or maybe it's kind of how they have the shuttle part, and then it connects up with the hyperspeed hyperdrive version of it.
Right.
So does that not have any kind of planetary scanning ability? Right. Then as well, I don't know. Could you use the effing force to sense life forms on the planet? Are we supposed to believe as the audience that they are legitimately like cataloging the entire planet's surface? Four total Jedi are tasked with the entire planet's surface, and they've been there 7 weeks. Can you imagine how little of the planet they've probably covered at this point? Like, it's ridiculous. It is a laughable idea, and I think that like from a writing piece, this is absolutely insanity that that this is like a plot point. I like that they're bringing this concept of a virgins, like they're looking for a virgins. I had never heard that term before, so it was something new for me as a Star Wars fan. But I thought it was interesting. It makes me feel like the Bunta tree is, if that's what it's called, I think that's what it's called. That whatever tree that like they're hanging out by when Soul first kind of comes upon May and Osha, that seems to me like a very unique tree. And then the fact that May materializes there at the end of, I want to say episode 3 or something like that, I think that's like, if you want to say a virgins, like that seems to be like a source of the force, if you want to say. So like but I also felt like the Jedi were not behaving like Jedi. Like Master Torbin is a snotty, angsty, like I get it. Yeah, we've seen Padawans that sort of like to rebel, right? I mean, we saw Anakin, right? He definitely did not behave. But there was nothing about Torbin that should suggest that he's also this way. But he just wants to go home. He just misses Coruscant. Like, I don't know.
I didn't like that.
I didn't. He just didn't. He didn't act like a Jedi. And like he was bummed out about the food. He was tired of eating Nuna legs, he says. So he's like complaining and whining about food. He doesn't want to be on the planet anymore. I don't want to do this. Like, he's just a whiner. And then he gets overtaken by Mother Anastasia, and then he's crying about it. And then he has to fight possessed Kelnaka later on, and that for those reasons he's gonna take a vow of silence. I just don't understand. Like, that motivation makes no sense to me. Like, why he's like, okay, I'm not gonna talk anymore, and I will kill myself with poison later. Like, that is nuts. Nothing that he experienced is worthy of that.
The way that I interpreted that, and I turned to my wife when we were watching it, and I said, okay, I can see why he killed himself, because the way that I interpreted it, his choice to be like, okay, I want to go home, and then taking the speeder bike and going off, he sets in motion a chain of events that leads to, you could say, not only the entire witch coven getting wiped out, although we didn't see what happened to Mother Coral at the end. If you noticed, she turns into smoke, and then we never see her again. Maybe she becomes the lost smoke monster in Lost.
Well, I interpreted that as she was possessing Kelnaka.
And then what happened after that when she was done?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
That's the only one I didn't see accounted for, because Mother Anastasia was on the ground, all the witches were on the ground. So I don't know if we're gonna get anything in the next episode, which is the last episode. But let's just say she died also, right? So he's responsible for all of the witches dying. He thought he was responsible for May dying until back then, until the 16 years later when, oh, okay, that's what brought him out. May, oh, you're alive. Okay, I was waiting for that. Now I can kill myself. Now I have a reason to kill myself. The things that happened with Kelnaka and him kind of, I feel like going into not hiding, but going off on the planet by himself, secluding himself, and them having this big cover up, all of that stuff that happened. And actually, even if you fast forward to the 16 years at the beginning of this episode or this season, all of the Jedi that are starting to get knocked off, everything goes back to his decision that he made to take that speeder bike and go do that. So to me, I felt like that was his guilt of causing all this stuff to happen, that he said, okay, I have to kill myself. I definitely can see your um like, not apprehension, but he just didn't feel like it was enough of an action that happened to cause him, because I saw this a lot. You're not the only person that had this reaction of, that was it? That was the reason why he went into the bearish vow and why he
Yeah.
killed himself.
I just think
But
like
yeah,
the way you're approaching it is from a very mature standpoint, like that he's
me?
got the maturity to recognize his own responsibility or involvement in it. But nothing we've seen about him demonstrates a maturity. It only demonstrates him as an immature Jedi.
I'm trying to
Or
do the
Padawan.
timeline. So they said he'd been in that for 10 years, right? And it had been 16 years since it happened. So I guess there's a 6-year gap in between when this event happened and then when he started the bearish vow. So maybe in that 6 years, the guilt just steadily built.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I
I mean, but he was there. He knows that he didn't start any fire.
right.
It
Well,
was
the
always
cover-up-
burning since the world's been turning.
Right. Maybe the cover up of that, we had to lie about this. That's
Yeah.
also weighing on his
I mean,
conscience.
if anybody should be suffering from the weight of guilt, it should be Master Soul. And
Yes.
obviously he is, and we're seeing that the cracks forming for him and everything, but like he's got the most to atone for.
Yes.
Which is ironic because he was probably the most sage of the bunch that we assumed up until this point.
Right. I think
Yeah.
he comes out looking the worst out
He
of
does.
this group. And Carrie Ann Moss comes out, to me, I thought she comes out looking better. And the way that I felt like she was trying to, hey, we got to go tell the council. We got to do this by the book. And then he takes off. Torbin takes off. She's got to then put out the fires. She's got to stop Kelnaka using the force. Like, she's got to do all this stuff. And I almost felt like she's the mom. And all right, my kids are being rowdy again. I got to rile everybody up. I got to round everybody up and put them back in their car seats. So to me, I talked to someone else. I think it was Tim, our friend Super Tim, who said that Indara came off. Oh, he said he found her sketchy in this, like shady. Something about her was off to him.
Yeah.
And I said, I had the opposite. I thought she came off as level-headed. She came off as rational, and what a proper Jedi should have done in that situation. Soul and Torbin are emotional, and they're acting off their emotions. Kelnaka's just in the background, like you said, playing with a metal detector. He's not. He doesn't really do anything. But those two, Torbin's emotions are like, I want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. It's like, get me out of here. And then Soul's, he has this attachment to Osha, and like all of his decisions are like, we got to save these kids. We can't let them die. We can't let the witches sacrifice them or whatever they're going to do. And Torbin had a little bit of that too, where he's like, we have to save the children. But just emotions with those two is my big thing.
Yeah, Indara definitely came across as cold, very by the book, like you said, very textbook. But I also think that to some degree, I would even not be surprised if she just was going through the motions of talking to the council, but she never actually talked to them.
Right.
I think like she let enough time pass by that would be like a reasonable amount of time to expect to get a response back from the Jedi Council. And then she just went out and talked to the rest of the group and said, yeah, they said no. Sorry, guys. We're not going to, they don't want to take them on. They're too old, blah, blah, blah. You know, like, I don't fully believe that she got a legitimate response from the council. I think she's acting of her own motivations, just like the rest of them are. In their own ways.
Because we didn't see that interaction.
Yeah, we don't see that. It's true. I mean, that's totally just how I felt about it. Like the way that she came out.
Yeah, that's plausible to me.
Yeah. And so, and it's just like the way that she already had her reservations about the girls. And then she's like, all right, fine, we'll talk to the council. You know, like it just felt like it was platitudes, you know? So like, very much placating Soul in what he needed. So I'm just like, whatever. The fight scene was good. I enjoyed the 2-on-1 with Torbin and Soul versus Kelnaka. When we've been waiting to see Kelnaka in battle, but I gotta say I never would have expected it to be a Jedi versus Jedi fight that we would have seen him in. Like I assumed he was going to be in some kind of lightsaber battle with somebody else, right? Like but in the flashback, it ends up being with another Jedi.
Yeah. The problem about this is they had shown that footage in a trailer. And so if you had watched the trailer, it was spoiled already because people were like, number one, they were mad that Carrie-Anne Moss died in the first episode. And people were like, no, she's going to get a flashback. Don't worry. We're going to get more of her. They were like, oh, I'm sad after episode 5, Kelnaka died, and we didn't get to see him with his lightsaber. And people were like, we're going to get him again. Don't worry, there's a flashback because there's that scene in the trailer. I kind of wish they hadn't put that in the trailer, and this came as a surprise. Oh, wow, more Kelnaka. That would have been cool. There was actually another shot. The shot of Soul going up the castle, the Witch's Coven. That was in the trailer. I had forgotten that. I just happened to watch the first trailer again before I watched last night's episode. And I was like, oh no, I probably shouldn't be doing this as I was watching it because I was like, if there's any footage in here that I haven't seen before, that means we're about to see it in this episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, him scampering up the side, which I kind of had two minds about because I was like,
does that make sense? Foolish
that he's able to do that even? Like, is the Force helping him climb up the wall? He's Spider-Man now.
I think we should have seen a few Force jumps to get up there.
Yeah, I thought we were actually, there was one where the door was locked and he was like trying to get up and I was like, oh, he's going to Force jump up this. But we didn't end up seeing that. But it was fine. It didn't like throw me off or anything. What did kind of throw me off, there was two things about this episode that I'm not 100% sure where the budget went because this show has a large budget, like a movie budget. I think we've talked about that on a previous episode. And the speeder bike scenes looked terrible to me. They look like they are from a bad video game cutscene. You can tell like the green screen is so obvious. And there's times where they're doing a turn, but you could tell that they just digitally turn them or something. Like it just
interesting.
Didn't look right.
I'll have to rewatch it and watch that part again.
Those parts to me kind of took me out of it when I was watching it. I was like, oh, I could see the curtain comes back when I can see bad special effects. I'm like, oh no. And my wife often will point out that looks like a green screen. Like she gets taken out of it a lot. She didn't do it this time, but I could definitely tell that the speeder bikes, they could have used a couple more passes maybe in the special effects department. So that was one. The other one to me, Shoff, I really liked the Mother Anastasia, her last scene in this. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. We're going to spoil this. Her turning into mist and May starting to turn. That to me was like, number one, I've never seen that before in Star Wars. So that was kind of cool to show me something I've never seen before. But I wish it was more coherent because it was a little confusing. Why did Soul stab her? Because if I was Soul and I'm a Jedi and she's turning into smoke, I'm just gonna let her turn into smoke. Like, I'm not gonna, all right, time to pull out my lightsaber and stab her.
Well,
Like
and
that.
why would you think to stab the spot where she no longer
Yes.
is,
Right.
too? Like that.
Maybe he was using the force there. That's not clear. This is just us kind of using our own imagination. But yeah, that where he poked was kind of weird because she was just smoke at that point. So how did you know you were actually hitting her? But I wish, because I understand the idea behind it, right? And I think it's clear that Soul thought she was making a move to hurt somebody. Like she was doing something
Yeah.
to hurt someone. And so he was getting to, as a defensive maneuver, he goes to stab her. But it didn't seem malicious enough to me. Just her turning into smoke, and then a little bit of her, the edges of
Yeah.
her starts to turn. How did
I
you
want to know
interpret that?
what was she trying to do? Was it just an escape? She was trying to get away? She
That's
was
the
trying to
way.
get May
Yeah.
away?
I don't think that, I think they're going to leave it ambiguous. I don't think they're going to
Yeah.
say the next episode, but the way that I interpreted it, I thought she was trying to teleport and bring May with her to go to another place. And then before she could do that, he stabs her and kills her.
Gotcha.
And that, it's like I love that, what happens from that. I just didn't love the execution of it. I just kind of wish it was
Yeah.
more like, it's almost the same as when Anakin turns to the dark side in episode 3. I already knew what was going to happen. I know that he's going to turn to the dark side. I know he's going to be Vader. But him turning from, I'm for the Jedi, I'm for the Republic or whatever. And then, all right, next up, I'm killing babies. All right, I'm killing the younglings left and right. Like, that was a quick turn for me, even if it was for the love of Padme to try to save Padme. He just felt like they could have used a couple more scenes of him falling or turning.
Oh, I
And
agree. I agree. I think they relied on us remembering how easy it was for him to slaughter Tusken Raider children as well
yeah,
as mothers too. So like, and I slaughtered them like animals.
that was the point when he turns. I think a lot of people say it comes later, but I think that Tusken Raider point is the point where he turns to the dark side.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. Just this Mother Anastasia scene, to me, it felt the same way, where I was like, man, I like where they went with it. I like that was the incident, right? That because I
Yeah.
was not expecting that the mystery was a success because I was not able to guess what happened there. But just the execution of why, because I stood up and when I saw it, I was in my chair and I stood up and I said, "What? That doesn't make sense. Why did he do that?" And then I started thinking about it more and more, and I was like, okay, I guess she was trying to go for it. It was almost like she was trying to go for her gun and he shot her before
Yeah.
she got it.
Yeah.
Like that, what it feels like to me. But it just could have used a little bit more, Shoff, like a little bit something in the special effects, maybe. Maybe it was written on
It
the
was a cool
page.
look though. It was a pretty
Yeah.
cool look. I will say this though. I think that scene, the whole purpose of her having that moment of turning into a smoke monster and then May starting to do the same thing, I think that May successfully did that as she was falling and rematerialized at that tree.
Oh,
And I
okay.
think that if we get any more flashbacks, I think we'll get that established. And I think that's really, it's an
That makes
establishing
sense.
effect to
Yeah.
show that they have the capabilities to do that. Because otherwise, her just randomly appearing by the tree means that she like resurrected or something, right? So like,
Yeah.
my guess is from a self-preservation, as she's falling, she turns herself into
Okay.
mist.
Yeah.
Whatever.
That makes sense. That makes
So
100% sense. Yeah.
again, speculation, we don't know, but from just the breadcrumbs that they've given us, that seems
Yes.
like scenes are there for a reason. Like one scene sets up another scene later.
Right.
Chekhov's gun, they show you a gun earlier, it's going to be used later. Like I feel like that is just a demonstration of abilities so that we are justified when it appears later on. So
Yes. Yeah. I think that's 100% correct. And man, I loved the other side of when we get, the actual story instead of just one person's perspective. And that scene that Shoff hated initially in episode 3. What did you do? What did you do? And they both fall. in my mind, I had created a scenario where I said, okay,
What did you
Saul.
do? What did you do? What did you do?
And they don't, I think they did say it in this one, but I don't remember them saying it that many times. But anyways, in my mind, I had created a scenario where Saul was holding both of them up, and then he had dropped one of them. So when this happened, I was like, "Hey, that was my like in my mind canon, that was what happened." So I was kind of happy that I saw it, and that makes sense. Like he thought she was dead, and they would want to cover that up, and then at the end, them saying, "All right, we're going to tell everybody that May started a fire that killed this thing," and that is true from a certain point of view. Like, they just didn't tell you everything that
Yeah, it's
happened.
a
They told
white
you a
lie.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I kind of like that all makes sense, and that is justified to me because that was one of the big things was, is the mystery gonna line up with what we saw in episode 3 and then justify the what happened, 16 years ago and them covering it up and all this stuff. So, nothing to me, still nothing's ruined about the canon. They didn't do any of that stuff. Actually, show off. Let's get into the splitting the two people, because that was another thing that people were all up in arms about. All right, Anakin is the only one that can be the Immaculate Conception. No one else cannot have a father. These two are breaking the canon. They're breaking the lore. The way I interpreted this, and I want to get your thoughts on this.
Okay.
They didn't say that Osha slash May was the chosen one, that she was created by the midi-chlorians, Immaculate Conception. To me, the way that they're saying this, she was one person. So that was separate. She was conceived as one person. They use their witch powers to split them into two people. And then that's how we get the twins. And that's why she said, I created them. That's in my mind. That's the way I interpreted that line. Did you see it the same way, or do you still feel like it's the Immaculate Conception when she said I created them? How do you
Oh
feel
no,
about
no,
that?
I think you're right. Yeah, I think your interpretation is correct. It's definitely a manipulation that created it. And it explains uh I mean it explains the nature of and also this coven has a real thing about power of two, right?
Yes. Hmm.
They're all about the power of two. And
And
so
that rhyme, remember the nursery rhyme? We kept on saying it over and over. Then I'm one, you are two, whatever it is.
yeah, yeah,
I had
yeah.
it written down, but that, to me, that was a hint from the beginning that they were saying something about them being the same person. And we even talked about, kind of speculated, maybe they're force projecting the other one over to the other
Right.
side. So all of that stuff, it makes sense. They were one person. They got split into two. Now, what does that mean going forward? Like,
Doesn't that make you more upset when you see that they didn't cast identical twins as
doesn't make
kids?
me
Give me a
upset.
freaking break. So stupid.
I
Or
want
just do it like with what they were doing for Amandla Steinberg. Like, just cast one kid and have them do both parts. Like, and if you can't do that from a labor law perspective of how Hollywood works, that's why you cast identical twins. They did it all the time. I mean, like, they've done it so much.
Lindsay Lohan did it in a Parent Trap.
Right. Yeah. Or if
yeah.
you want the twins, you got Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen, or you got the twins that are Uncle Jesse and Aunt Becky's kids. Those are twins.
Right.
The ones from Sweet Life.
Right.
I can't think of their names,
Yeah.
anyways.
Zach,
But like,
Zach and Cody are their actor names. Yeah.
right. Thank you. Yeah. So like,
yeah.
it's established in Hollywood. This is what you do, right? So, I just don't get it. That part really irks me. It really makes me mad. I wish I had an understanding as to why they did it.
For all the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody fans, Cole Sprouse and Dylan Sprouse.
Thank
the actors'
you.
names.
Yes.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it would have, to me, visually, like, immersed me more.
Yeah.
If they looked identical, because I was easily, from episode 1, I was able to tell them apart, and I didn't think they were supposed to be identical when I watched them. Now I know they're supposed to be, but it would have helped me as far as immersion. But I don't know what the reason is specifically. Maybe they'll talk about it on a behind the scenes thing. But I want to know, does that mean May is, the passion? She was a part of OSHA, and she was her anger or her, whatever. And that's what that means to have split them. Or does it have any ramification at all? Like, are they just two people now? So I want to know, going forward, hopefully we get another season of this, but what does that mean now that we know that they're split? And that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier when I was saying, did they ask more questions than they answered in this? Because we still don't know about Chimere. We still don't know about Vernestra. Um, a lot of stuff is still left to be unanswered. And there's only one episode left. That's also another reason why I wish they had more episodes than just 8. Actually, you know what, Shaw? That's a good question that I had. I wrote this down in my notes. I don't think I've ever asked you this.
Uh-oh.
Do you think this would have been better as a movie, as either one 2-hour movie or a trilogy of 2-hour movies? Do you think it would, the pacing would have worked better? Because a lot of people I saw were like, hey, they should just release every episode. The binge model would have been better.
No.
Do you think it would have been better as a movie? I think it would have looked better, would have had like a movie cinematography look to it. Would that have helped the pacing? And then also, here's another question, Chop, a bonus question. Would you have wanted to see it chronologically? Did telling it out of order add anything for you? I'm curious.
Sure. I do think pacing wise, it would have improved as a movie because they would have had to remove things.
It wouldn't have had those endings, like you were saying, those abrupt endings.
And yeah, things would have had a better flow, but they would have also had to cut stuff because there's no way they could have included all of this in a movie. So there's some things that would have got left on the cutting room floor, which is okay by me because there's plenty of crap in this season. Sorry, your bonus question was,
would you have wanted it chronologically told?
No, I really like stories that tell things a little bit out of order, especially when the mystery is entirely dependent on not telling the full story right up front. If we had seen everything that went down on Brendock 16 years ago before the present day storyline that's happening for them, I think the dramatic and the drama behind it is kind of lost. So I think you have
would
to
know
more than that. I think you have to start in the middle of it with OSHA and as an adult, and then sort of have this flashback thing that kind of like manifests a few times over the course of, if you're doing a movie, right, to get all the answers. I think that's better storytelling. Definitely.
I'm the same way.
Your audience guessing. You don't want to give all the details away right from the start.
I'm the same way. I liked the out of order nature of it. The only pro I can see for telling it chronologically would be you getting to know the characters first, and then like Kevin, our friend from Fuse Film, who was on when we talked about the first episodes 1 and 2. I was a guest on his Fuse Film podcast, and he said, why should I care about any of these characters? I don't know them.
Yeah.
If they had told it in chronological, you would have gotten all these episodes to get to know them. And then, okay, now I see what happens on like the what is the current timeline in the show that we're watching right now. It would have been after all of these things that we saw in the past with them. So you would have known May and OSHA. You would have known, I don't know about Chimere. Like, we still don't know what Chimere's deal is, but you would have gotten to know all the Jedi. And so that standpoint, I can see people's argument of it, but I like the out of sync nature of it because it kept me guessing of, hey, what's going to happen next? So I like all of that stuff. I did want to point out, we talked about the Brendock situation and it being Bear Shoff not enjoying what they were doing and having only 4 Jedi to survey the entire planet.
Collecting rocks and pulling weeds.
It was a cool Easter egg for them to say the reason that they thought Brendock was uninhabited and nobody was there was because of something that happened, a disaster that happened like 100 years ago. That's actually the start of the High Republic books. The Light of the Jedi, written by Charles Soule, as Shaw says. Charles Soule, if you're nasty. The Light of the Jedi book, which was the first, that was the first High Republic anything. Like there was no comics before that. There was no TV shows, cartoons. It was that book that kicked off phase 1 of the High Republic. The very first thing that happens in that book is this hyperspace disaster where a space station falls out of the sky and the debris kills a bunch of people, messes up a bunch of planets. And now we're finding out that Brendock was one of those planets. So that was a cool Easter egg to the High Republic fans. I just happened to have read that first part of the book. I didn't finish that book, but I read that first part and I was like, oh, I remember that. I remember that. And our friend Tim, Super Tim, who has read a lot more High Republic stuff than me, he was very happy. He texted me right away to say,
yeah, he was
hey,
like, I understood that reference.
Yes. So that I wanted to call that as a shout out, as well as the Virgins in the Force that Shoff talked about. The only other time that I remember them specifically saying this in Star Wars is episode 1 in The Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon is reporting back to the council and he's like, I found a Virgins in the Force around a person. And they're like, huh? A person? Because they're only thinking it's a location. And
oh yeah,
Brendock is kind of like that, where they're like, oh, there's a Virgins in the Force where it's a high midichlorians, a high essence of the Force is right there. The dark cave that Luke goes to on Dagobah, that's also a Virgins in the Force, although they don't say it out loud.
Is it kind of like implying ley lines, sort of like how we interpret ley lines?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it's a very strong point. Like when you go there, it's like, oh, the Force is overwhelmingly
like
strong here.
In Arizona, in Sedona, they refer to that as a vortex. It's a location of a vortex, which is like a very like powerful, unique energy is like manifested there. Yeah,
right.
That's why a lot of people like think in Sedona there's some sort of metaphysical or spiritual energy or aliens hang out there, like that. They're drawn to this vortex, and there's vortexes around the world. So like
yeah. So that is a Virgins in the Force in the Star Wars language and lingo. And I like that they were there studying it there. And Soul is kind of like, we need to study this power. We need to understand this better. And I don't think the Jedi ever do. We see what happens to the Jedi. I don't think they ever did become, more attuned with the Force, had a better understanding of the Force.
Well, they're probably still cataloging the planet in these
even 100 years later. Yeah,
they're like, well, we're almost done with Brendock.
Maybe in Rey's movie, Shaw, we'll see that they finally finished
Starship Enterprise. We could do a planetary scan and just be over with this nonsense.
Yes. All right. So this is all setting up the last episode. Shaw, you personally, what are you looking forward to in this last episode? And is there anything, if they don't show it, it would be a disappointment to you?
Well, if we don't get to see Chimere's butt.
I was going to say that. I know Shaw like the back of my hand.
Hey, the strangers.
I knew you were going to say that. I predicted it.
The strangers thing. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
What I want to see is I want to see somebody become an acolyte. I mean, the show is called The Acolyte. Like, if the goal is to have an acolyte by the end of this, then we better get that.
Yes.
My prediction is it's Osha, because when she learns something like this, that may totally tip the scales on stuff. I want to see more of Chimere's backstory. I think that we probably will. I would not be surprised if Vernestra is his former master or teacher, however that looks. I think that she's in this for a reason. I think that there's definitely more going on there. And it looks like he's got lightsaber whip burns and scars on his back. So that I want to see. I hope that Soul gets some sort of peace from the truth that is laid bare.
I don't think he's making it out of this show.
I feel
don't
like
think
he's not. Yeah, I
Yeah.
hate to say it. I really have enjoyed his performance.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that he
100%.
is a flawed character. But I also agree. I think he's going to have a tragic ending, unfortunately.
Yeah. Man, all of those things, Shaw, I am with you. I got to the point with the scars on his back now that I don't think it's going to be a fake out, because you and I talked about the Chimera reveal. I thought, oh, it's so obvious that it's him that it's not going to be him, because they've completely convinced me that it is. They are throwing us off the scent. They're saying, "Hey, look over here," and then they're going to actually be over here. Now I'm like, no, they foreshadowed it with her whip. That's exactly what it's going to be. It's not going to be anything else. I think it may be something where they play around with why she did that, because he's trying to tell OSHA, like, I was thrown away and they did this to me. My master, did this to me. I was a Jedi a long time ago. So they're setting that up to be like they did something bad, like the Jedi whipped him and they shouldn't have. I think it's going to be he turned bad. He turned to the dark side and she was like fighting him, and that's that's why she gave him the scar, not because, oh, I'm just gonna whip you because I don't you're a bad, like, there was a point to it. She was defending somebody or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's the way that they're gonna do it. But yeah, I will be disappointed if there's no resolution to Chimera's whole thing of what was he trying to do with May and Osha? Why does he want this pupil? Is there another master? Are we going to see Darth Tenebris or Darth Plagueis? And that leads into episode 1, that whole thing. I want that stuff wrapped up. I want to have a satisfying conclusion. And like you said, I want to see a purpose to that name, the Acolyte, because at 7 episodes in, I don't 100% feel like it's lived up to that name. Like, there's been a lot of interesting stuff that's happened, but if I'm just focusing on the Acolyte, well, number one, we don't even know who the Acolyte is specifically, or why there's an Acolyte even to begin with. Like, what is the purpose of this? And I don't think they're going to answer this, but I'm still over here asking, why did he want her to kill the Jedi with no weapons? What was the point of that test? And if she passed, did she then become his acolyte? Or did she become his Padawan and then he's overthrowing his master? So I want that answered. I want that cleared up. I want the ambiguity done. And I want to know, are May and Osha two parts of the same person? So like, she's her rage, she's her happiness and joy, whatever. I want to know, was there a purpose to splitting them apart, or was it just all, just to throw us off, just to be like, hey, there's a new thing you never heard of. People can split
Exactly.
consciousness.
Yeah. Or if
So
maybe by the end of this next episode, they remerge.
I was thinking about that too, because
as one entity. Yeah.
You think about that Acolyte O, and it's like 2 O's, and that whole ceremony, the ascension ceremony, is the moons coming together and forming that like eclipse, and that's when the power comes down. So yeah, maybe that is what Shoff, we just solved it. That's the Acolyte. That's the end of the show. The very last scene is them coming together. I am the Acolyte. Credits. That's it, Shoff. We did it. We solved it.
Cut the check.
Come back next week and we'll prove ourselves right. But thank you very much, Shaw, for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure to talk the Acolyte with you. There's good, there's bad. We're not shills. There's some things we like, some things we don't like. But I'm having a great time talking to you.
Yeah, it's been a lot of
water
fun.
cooler conversation. So kudos to you, Shaw, and kudos to you, the viewer, for watching this episode. Leave a comment down below. We've been getting some great comments recently talking about, Shaw, how we don't talk over each other. We're nice, polite people, and giving our Star Wars thoughts on the Acolyte has been beneficial to some people. Some people are still leaving the comments, all right, this show's trash. That's it. No other conversation can be had. There's no like well, I like this and I didn't like this, or I think they could have improved this. Every there's still that side of the
Yeah.
fandom that's like, trash, that's it, done,
Well,
no conversation.
when you're picking up rocks on Brendock, they can't all be gems, right? They can't all be
Oh,
gems.
and that's the way the Shoff crumbles. Thank you very much for joining us here on our discussion of episode 7 of the Acolyte Choice. We know you have a choice because there's a ton of reviews that you could be watching, but you're watching us right now. So thank you very much. Leave your comments down below. What do you think is going to happen in the end of the Acolyte season 1? Will there be a season 2? I want to know your thoughts down below. Let me know. Anything we talked about? Did you think it should have been a better movie? Did you think it should have been better as a binge model? What are your thoughts? Chronological order, all that stuff that we talked about on this episode. We would love to hear you, and we would be honored if you would join us.
Trust only in the Force.